Welcome to another episode of the coding tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a game of Brick Breaker. I made a video that goes through the collision detection algorithms between circle to circle, rectangle to rectangle, and circle to rectangle. And in this video, we'll be going through the rectangle to circle algorithm to detect when the ball hits the bricks. To create a game of Brick Breaker, I'm going to write a total of 3 classes: the brick class, the ball class, and the paddle class. So let's start by creating a new JavaScript file, 3 to be exact. So you come here, underneath this arrow, click Create File. And then I'm going to create a total of 3 files now. So I'm going to name them brick.js, ball.js, and paddle.js. And before you start writing anything, go to index.html file. And underneath here, copy this line of code 3 times, change the names here to the name of your file. So brick.js, ball.js, and paddle.js. And this is how you integrate the new files into your program. Let's go to the brick.js file. Start by writing the brick class. You need the word class, brick, and then within the constructor function, because the brick is going to be a rectangle, I'm going to give it a total of 4 parameters: x, y, w, and h. And then I am going to name them this.x, this.y, this.w, and this.h. And then let's create a method to draw the brick. It's going to be a rectangle, so we can use the built-in function rect, which takes in a total of 4 arguments. The first 2 are going to be the x and y coordinate of the top left corner of the rectangle. So this.x, this.y, and then the third and the fourth are the width and the height. Then let's give it a color white. So now that we have created this class, let's just test it to make sure that it works. Go back to sketch.js. Then we're going to declare a new variable. Let's call it brick. And brick is going to be a new object of the class brick. And I'm going to give it x and y location at the center of the canvas. And then the width and the height, let's do 100 by 200. Click play. Nothing happens because we haven't called the method yet. So underneath the draw function, you can call the method by writing the name of that object and then dot and then the name of the method draw brick. Ooh, let's go back to our brick class, draw brick. This dot h is equals to h. Next, I'm going to write a method called collided, and collided is going to be a method that checks when the rectangle or the brick is collided with something or the ball. So collided is going to take in 1 parameter, ball. So the argument that we're going to put in this method is going to be the object ball. There are a total of 3 steps to check when a circle is colliding with a rectangle. The first step is to check where the circle is relative to the edges of the rectangle. So to do that, I am going to first declare 2 variables called close x and close y. And I'm going to set or initialize this as the x and y location of the ball first. And close x and close y basically is going to be set as the x coordinate and the y coordinate of the edges that the ball is closest to. So we're going to write a total of 4 conditional statements. So if the location of the x coordinate of the ball is more than this dot x plus this dot w, that means it's on the right side, then we're going to set close x to be the right side. Else, if ball.x is less than this.x, then it's going to be on the left side. Same thing on the y-axis. If ball.y is more than this.y plus this.h, then close y will be set at this.y plus this.h, and else if bar.y is less than this.y, then close y will be set at the top edge, which is this dot y. The second step is to check the distance between close x and close y, or the edges of the rectangle, and the center of the circle. We're going to use a function called dist, D-I-S-T, which is a built-in function within p5.js that calculates the distance between 2 points. Let's declare a variable called distance, and distance is going to be calculated here. So close x, close y, and then the center of the ball, right? So ball.x and ball.y. And then here comes the last step, which is to check if the two objects are colliding. And we will know if the distance between close x and close y and ball.x and ball.y is less than or equals to the radius of the ball. Then I'm going to set a new Boolean variable called this.collide, and then let's set that to true, else it's not colliding, so this.collide will be false. Then we have to go up here and create this new variable and initialize it as false. So we want to test if this function collided works, but we need an argument as the ball object. So let's create that ball object. Let's go to ball.js file. So first we need to create the ball class. And the ball class is going to be a circle, right? So inside the constructor function, we need to give it a total of 3 parameters, which is the x and y coordinates and the radius. This.x equals to x, this.y equals to y, and this.r equals to r. Then let's just create a method called drawBall, and we're gonna use an ellipse function which takes in a total of 4 arguments, the x and y location of the center of the circle and the width and the height, which is the diameter. So we need to multiply this.r by 2. Okay, and let's give it a bright red color. Let's test that this class works first. So let's create a ball object. Ball is a new object underneath the ball class, and we want it to be at mouse x and mouse y location, and let's give it a size of, let's do 15. But because mouse x and mouse y are going to change continuously, right? And setup function is only called once, so we also want to, let's do it before draw the brick. Ball.x, we want to keep setting location of the ball to be at the mouse location. Let's play. Oh, we also need to call the drawBall function. Okay, now it's working, but when they're colliding, nothing happens. I actually want to draw the ball on top of the brick. Okay, so let's call the brick.collided function. Then we want to give an argument as the ball. But now, remember what we wrote in the conditional statement when these two objects collide. We just set the this.collide variable or Boolean variable to be true or false. So we cannot visually see what happens. Let's go back to brick.js, and I am going to change the color of the brick to yellow when the two objects collide. So if this.collide is true, then let's set the color of the brick to yellow. Else, then let's keep it at white. There you go. But now this is not the brick that we want. We want a bunch of bricks all the way on top of our canvas here. So I am going to comment out all of this for now. Let's create an array called bricks. Inside the setup function, what I want to do is that I want to create a 2D array bricks. And this 2D array is going to be populated by a bunch of bricks objects. So we need a nested loop. And this nested loop will go through the size of the column and the size of the rows, which we will need to declare after this. So columns, let's set it to 8, and rows, let's set it to 3. And we also need to declare one more, which is the size. I'm going to give it at 50 pixels. Within this nested for loop, what I need is that in the outer loop, first we need to populate the 2D array or the big array with a bunch of empty 1D array. And then inside our inner loop, we will create new objects, new brick objects. And what is the location? We don't want a static location like this. And what is the location? It's going to be I times the size, j times the size, and then the width and the height will be size and size. Now let's delete this. Then if you come down here, we also need to call the draw brick and this collided function, right? But now we need to also write a nested loop. In order to call each of these methods on each of the bricks objects. Okay, so it's going to be bricks of I and j index dot draw brick. So let's start with this first one. Okay, so the bricks are drawn all the way up here. And then let's check when things collide. We're going to put ball in here. There's only one ball. Let's play. Okay. So now we see when the ball hits the bricks. Okay, we can delete these two lines of code. But what we want to actually happen is that when the ball hits the bricks, we want that brick to go away. We can do that by setting a new variable. I'm going to set this variable called val. I'm going to set it at 0 initially. But when the two objects collide, I want this val to be changed to 1. Okay? And then what I want it to happen is that the draw brick and the collided methods, we only want to call them on the bricks that actually have not been collided yet. We can set a conditional statement that says if bricks of I and j dot val is equals to 0, which means they have not been collided yet, then we want to call these two functions. Okay, so now it's working. What we need to do is that we don't want to set the x and y coordinate of the circle as the mouse x and mouse y, right? We want the ball to bounce around. So you should be familiar with this piece of code already, but if not, just go and look at my bouncing ball examples. So I'm gonna create two more methods. The first one, we're gonna call it move ball. And move ball is basically going to change the x and y coordinates of the ball when we call it. By what? We want to move it by dx and dy. And I'm going to set a value at 2 for dx and let's do 3 for dy. And inside the move ball method, this.x is going to be equals to this.x plus this.dx. This.y is equals to this.y plus this.dy. So let's try this first. So let's move it first. Move ball. Oh, and then we don't need this line of code anymore because it's not going to be set at the mouse location. But let's just start it a little bit down below Okay, let's set it at the middle of the canvas for the x coordinate, and then let's set it a little bit below half of the height. So let's do 250. So it does move, but off the screen. So the next function that we need is going to be called check boundaries. Check, do this, boundaries. And check boundaries is going to check when the ball hits the four corners of the canvas. So if this dot x is more than or equals to the width, or this dot x is less than or equals to 0, then we want to change the direction of the ball. So we just multiply the dx by -1. Same thing on the y coordinates or y direction. So if this dot y is more than or equals to the height, or this dot y is less than or equals to 0, this dot dy is going to be equal to this dot dy times -1. Let's go back here. And then we're going to call this ball.check boundaries. Okay, so now it bounces and we're getting there. We're almost done, as you can see. The last piece that we're missing now is just the paddle. Let's go to our paddle.js file. Okay, class paddle. So it's going to be a rectangle, but it's going to be at a specific location. So let's set this dot x. I'm going to set this dot x to be a parameter here because I want us to be able to move the paddle based on the x coordinate of the mouse, so the mouse x. And then this dot y, I want it to be actually at the bottom of our canvas, but slightly higher. So let's do height minus, how about 20? And then let's do the width to be, let's do 80. And then the height, let's do 10. And then let's draw a paddle. So we're going to draw it with the rect function, this dot x, this dot y, this dot w, and this dot h. And let's give it a color black. How about that? Go back to sketch.js. Let's create this new paddle object. Paddle is going to be a new object underneath the paddle class. And we can put mouse x here, but we need to also do what? We need to keep setting the paddle.x to be equal to mouse x underneath the draw function. We are going to call the paddle methods. So draw paddle. Okay, so now the paddle moves based on my mouse location, but it's the top left corner. So if you want it to move based on the middle of the paddle, then you can change the rect mode, but I'm going to keep it as is for now. The last piece that I need to do is actually to make sure that when the ball collides with the paddle, it actually bounces off the paddle. So I'm going to write a new function, a new method underneath the paddle class called hitPaddle. And hitPaddle also going to take in the ball argument, the ball object argument. HitPaddle is going to check the distance between the top edge of the paddle and the center of the ball on the y direction. And the conditional would be if that distance is less than the radius of the ball, then we know that the ball hits the paddle. So let's first create a new variable called dist_y. And this y is going to be the distance between the top edge of the paddle and the center of the ball in the y direction. So on the y direction, right? If this dot y is less than or equals to ball.r, so that's on the y direction, but it will only hit if the ball is within the bound, the x bound of the paddle, and ball.x is more than this dot x and ball dot x is less than this dot x plus this dot w. Then I want to change the direction of the ball on the y direction. So ball dot dy is going to be equals to ball dot dy times -1. So go back to sketch and let's call paddle dot hit paddle with an argument of the ball. Ooh. Okay. First, I want to set the ball size to be a bit smaller. Let's do 5. We're actually missing one piece. So when the ball hits the brick here, I actually want it to bounce off the brick. So I want the y direction of, so I want the dy basically of this ball to change every time it hits the brick. So let's go back to brick.js. And not only that, we want to change this .val to 1, we want to change ball.dy to be equals to ball.dy times -1. So let's try that. See, so every time it hits the brick, it changes the y direction. Okay. Now you see the skeleton of how a brick breaker game would work. What if you spice things up a little bit? Change the dimensions of the brick to be a rectangle, or even change the shapes to be circles. Give it a try.